Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, based on where you're joining in from. I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar. This is Rahul Kulkarni. I'm a principal with GitaCloud, and I will be moderating this webinar. The topic for today's webinar is Integrated Business Planning using SAP IBP, Why Care? So a couple of housekeeping items before we jump in. This webinar is being attended by more than 100 people across North America, Europe, and Asia. So all attendees' microphones will stay muted for the entire webinar. You can send us your questions anytime during the webinar using GoToWebinar chat section on your screen, and we'll consolidate all the questions and attempt to answer them towards the end of this webinar. The webinar is being recorded, and recording will be made available later on our website. So let me start by introducing our speaker panel for this webinar. Our first speaker is Ashutosh Bansal, who is founder and CEO of GitaCloud. Ashutosh has spent his career in leadership roles at PwC, IBM, and SAP prior to founding GitaCloud. He helped sell and deliver multiple IBP customer engagement in the high-tech industry in his role as a high-tech industry leader at SAP. GitaCloud has quickly expanded to have a global footprint and has become a close partner of SAP. Our next speaker is Pavan Bayyapu. He is a principal with GitaCloud. Pavan was at SAP as a VP and responsible for SAP IBP product. Pavan led the SAP IBP product development, customer success, and partner enablement at SAP. Pavan has also worked extensively on co-innovation projects focused on digital transformation in the areas like industrial IoT. And our third speaker, it's my pleasure to welcome our guest speaker for today, Kris Gorrepati, who currently leads SAP Solution Management for Digital Supply Chain at SAP. Prior to SAP, Kris was a VP of Product Management and co-founder at SAP, which was acquired by Samsung. Kris has a prior SCM leadership experience in organizations like Ford and Caterpillar. So let's review the flow of the webinar so you understand how we plan to spend next hour or so. So firstly, Ashutosh will cover a business performance context on why care about SAP IBP, what has changed, and how SAP IBP is different. After that, Kris will cover the SAP IBP overview. He will provide both history of SAP IBP, how it has evolved as a product, and where it is going from here. And then we'll have Pavan cover a customer use case of IBP. Pavan will also walk you through SAP IBP solution demo, so you have a first-hand appreciation of power of this platform. Lastly, Ashutosh will wrap up the webinar and will then answer the questions as many as we can. So with that, let's jump right in. I would like to ask Ashutosh to take it from here. Thanks everyone for your attention.
Thanks, Rahul. This is Ashutosh Bansal. Thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate you joining in. Wish you a happy and very successful 2017. So let's kick this off. As you know, SAP is going into digital transformation and transforming their own supply chain solution set from the days of APO into IBP now. And the natural question is what's causing this transformation and the need for it. So let's just understand the good old days and how the modern world looks like. The good old days, as you know, were characterized by very loyal customers, people who followed a brand, and in very stable market conditions. What this did is companies were able to look at their historical sales and extrapolate mathematically in a statistical forecast world what their sales were going to be. Given the relative certainty and predictability of the demand, the main function of supply chain became cost optimization. It's a very cost-centric focus to say, we know what needs to be made now, how do we figure out ways to make it most cost efficiently? This, along with the general sense of making only a select set of standard products, meant that the focus went to factory optimization and overall supply chain cost optimization. The focus was largely on functional excellence within manufacturing, within logistics, within warehousing, and so on. And even when people collaborated from a S&OP process perspective, the focus was largely within the enterprise. If you contrast this to where the modern world is, you can imagine now with the advent of social media, internet, connectivity of all sorts, consumers and customers have gotten very informed and as a result very empowered. They have lots of choices. There are players globally competing for their attention, and they can flip and go to an alternative product at the drop of a hat. If they sense a product going viral, which was the case with the recent holiday season and Amazon Echo Dot, etc., as voice-guided systems come into mainstream. Also, things can go south very quickly on companies when they have quality issues. They can't hide them anymore, as you know, the case with Samsung Galaxy Note. So when you put these going suddenly viral or going suddenly south conditions together, what you get is a very volatile market. Players, in terms of their strategy to cope with this market, have understood that just offering cost-effective products to the marketplace is not good enough anymore. There has to be customer value. The product has to add value to the customer's lives in a way that differentiates it from other products. And as a result, a lot of niche products have come into play to satisfy micro-segment demands. So now consumers are into buying exactly the specific brand of cereal that they like, not just one cereal for all, for example. And this is great from a customer satisfaction perspective and getting customers pulled back into the company. It doesn't do a great job for the supply chain. Supply chain, as you can imagine, we did a recent study one of our supply chain partners did in the CPG industry. And what they found was in the last 5 years, the number of items in the SKU portfolio have grown by more than 225%. And at the same time, the sales out of this innovation strategy has not really followed suit. The sales only went up 6%. So as you can see, the bottom line is that the product innovation strategy has added a lot of complexity to the supply chain and not necessarily a lot of value to the enterprise. Think about it, these products still need to be planned at a location level by planners, which results into a lot of burnout. It is also where a lot of inventory is hiding. So as the world tries to go very lean in terms of inventory, the long tail presents a major barrier to that progress. The other key factor is from a simple linear supply chain world, as people have gone very global looking for low-cost outsourcing options, what it's done is it's resulted in a very complex value network of providers collaborating, they're sometimes competing, and given the lack of multi-enterprise architectures in supply chain solutions, it's resulted into a very manual Excel email-driven world for the planners to coordinate and collaborate across the enterprise and across the value network. And this is where you see planners burning out, drowning in data, not being able to react to this uncertain demand and supply environment. So now that you understand where things have changed, what's necessitating new solutions, let's also understand the market going forward. It is not the ERP market of yesterday where you could just position IT-centric argument saying this is the information backbone, it connects data sets, it's reducing TCO, and those arguments don't work anymore. Now business executives are looking for a straight link from what they're implementing and adopting to shareholder value that it generates. So it's got to deliver hard outcomes and hard value. And if you understand the linkage, that will help also with the appreciation of why integrated business planning is much more than the advanced planning and S&OP solutions of yesterday. So for example, when you look at IBP, it impacts mainly 4 value levels. If you have more accurate forecasts in terms of short-term demand sensing enabled ability to follow and deploy inventory in the right places, the chances of stocking out at a customer shelf go down. As a result, your net sales go up. The lost sales are going down there. Also, as some of the unnecessary expediting and buying expensive raw materials at the last minute, or buying expensive contract manufacturing labor, etc. As you can see around the corner, if you can stochastically model all the risk and uncertainty in your demand world, you are able to take smarter calls, which optimize the overall cost, and your cost of sales and functional costs go down. Also, with improved multi-echelon inventory optimization capabilities, inventory goes down. And what this does is you have a world where your earnings are going up, your net operating profit is going up. And at the same time, your net working capital requirement is going down. Cash is moving from being locked into inventory to being available for other pursuits. As a whole, the organization can decide to pay back as dividend to state shareholders. Overall, the net asset requirement to operate the same level of revenue and business goes down. And when you look at return on invested capital, ROIC, operating profit going up, net assets going down, you get a much better return on your invested capital. And if you understand how shareholder value, the economic value added, is defined as a difference between ROIC and the weighted average cost of capital, as that spread increases, you generate more economic value than your competitors. And this is where the real holy grail of integrated business planning systems is in terms of what they're pursuing. A IBP system and a process should enable higher economic value. So with that, hopefully you understand the linkage between why we do what we do. Now let's understand how we do it, what capabilities are enabling this value. So in the world of yesterday, and even now, there are point solutions, best-of-breed providers that do certain functions really well. And SAP APO as an APS solution obviously was in this same space, very popular solution in a lot of SAP install base. As you can imagine, these boxes of planned demand or planned inventory or planned supply are all getting enhanced. So for example, this ability to predict demand in the short term, the ability to optimize service levels in your inventory terms, not just relying on broad ABC classifications, but being able to look at inventory against a profitability lens and saying an extra % of inventory, how does that help extra revenue? How much excess inventory and write-offs are occurring? What's the sweet spot from a service level and inventory point of view? As we look at the world of supply, being able to influence when we get the best pricing from suppliers and doing supply shaping and cost optimization are all new capabilities. So instead of just reacting to a ambitious manual demand statement or a stat forecast, now we are able to enter a world where we sense demand, we can shape demand, and then we can sense any supply network issues and shape them. As you can imagine, these functions are sometimes at odds with each other, and functional excellence doesn't necessarily produce enterprise excellence or value network excellence. And to that extent, sales and operations planning systems are absolutely required, where you can model end-to-end scenarios across demand, inventory, supply, and finance. You are able to assess the forecasted financials, the impact of each of those scenarios, where we model the best case, worst case from a demand perspective, from a supply perspective. And then your supply chain action plans and strategies need to be aligned to say, how do we cover most of these scenarios in a way that no matter how demand comes in or what kind of supply issues we face, that we will be okay from a profit forecast perspective in most of those scenarios. So that's the power that we introduced with IBP. This is also where some of the other best-of-breed providers are today. The real value, however, in our minds comes from this last box in conjunction with S&OP, which is sales and operations execution. This is where, as you release and detail your S&OP plans into execution, you have to make sure that you're not just losing the plans and something else entirely is happening in the execution work. Meaning, as demand comes in different, as you have supply imbalances, you need to be able to monitor the short-term demand and supply imbalances, which takes a full end-to-end value network visibility, real-time, what's happening in your supply chain. Being able to monitor execution performance, see the KPI trends, where things are going, being able to take corrective action. And that corrective action has to be a set of options that you can execute, all evaluated for their contribution to profitability. So as you come up with response, it's the optimal response to a specific situation. So as we look at these new capabilities of end-to-end supply chain visibility and control tower world, or end-to-end response orchestrated across the value network, these are capabilities that SAP IBP provides that are very unique and differentiated in our mind. So now that we've understood from a process perspective where new capabilities are and how it differentiates from the old world of APS, what I would like to do is invite Kris for an SAP IBP overview, tell us where the solution has been, where it's going, and give you a sense of the power of SAP's vision around a digital core and digital transformation. So Kris, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Firstly, I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for joining this session. To the GitaCloud team, thank you for organizing the webinar and inviting us to join and share our perspective. Over the next 10 minutes, what I would like to cover is provide an overview of SAP Integrated Business Planning. Secondly, I would like to set up SAP's integrated business planning in the context of the overall supply chain transformation. And finally, end the session with some of the unique capabilities and differentiators of SAP Integrated Business Planning. SAP Integrated Business Planning is a set of integrated components for agile supply chain planning. It's made up of, as Ash indicated, the number of integrated business processes that are being practiced or that companies are adopting. It is designed to support all of the integrated processes, starting from sales and operations planning to demand planning, inventory optimization, response and supply for how to meet the expected demand. And finally, supply chain control tower to provide end-to-end visibility. So let me start with the fact that SAP IBP is based upon the technology foundation of SAP HANA. As you all know, SAP HANA is one of the most scalable and fast database that is in the market, and IBP is a solution for supply chain planning that is natively developed on top with SAP HANA. What that means is it provides a unique capability to support the level of detailed planning that is needed in a very, very fast fashion. So you could today realistically run an agile supply chain planning process with SAP Integrated Business Planning. In terms of a little bit more detail around various components and the capabilities of SAP IBP, let me start with sales and operations planning. It's in our eyes, it's one of the most underrated processes, yet the most important in terms of improving a firm's operational performance. IBP provides support for a collaborative S&OP process with two unique features. One is to provide the level of detail, support for planning processes with the level of detail necessary in terms of product hierarchies and time frames, and the ability to bring in various aspects from marketing to finance to operational constraints that are in place. And secondly, it also provides very sophisticated capabilities for simulations, scenario planning, and using that capability to come up with a consensus S&OP number that works for the whole organization in the most optimal way. In terms of IBP Demand, IBP Demand is a classical demand planning application that provides support for both midterm to long-term demand planning processes, as well as importantly more short-term tactical demand forecasting requirements around using demand signal management. SAP IBP inventory is a multi-echelon inventory optimization process that allows companies to really support and address variations both from a demand side as well as supply side and everything in between. And one of the most important one and one of the most exciting parts of SAP IBP is also response and supply. Our response and supply component provides support for both supply planning from a time bucket, time series perspective, as well as order-based response planning when it comes to tactical order fulfillment issues. And the final one that provides a complete what we would call to be a visibility capacity. So to support the entire end-to-end supply chain visibility is the supply chain control tower. It provides support for two key capabilities. One is since it's based upon a very sophisticated big data platform that is HANA, it can accommodate and support and make visible all the supply chain information from planning to actual execution systems such as transportation management, your inventory systems, as well as warehouse management applications. So you get a complete full visibility, real-time visibility into what is happening in your extended supply chain. Secondly, it can also intelligently detect any exceptional situations. And when such situations occur, it provides a collaborative case management capacity so that your teams across the supply chain can work together and find a resolution. The next slide really provides evolution of SAP IBP. When it started, it's been in the market for almost half a decade now, right? We're in 2017, and it started off with SNOP, but grew into, as we worked with our customers across practically all industries, and with hundreds of customers, grew into all the modules that we just discussed in the last slide, right? Today, we have significant focus on not only adding more capabilities to the existing modules, but also real-time fulfillment scenarios and response and supply. As we move forward, and we are working with several of the customers, we are looking at tighter integration, especially around providing supply chain collaboration capabilities, using our Ariba network, creating interoperability between SAP IBP and SAP Ariba through a solution called collaborative supply chain, where companies can work with their supply chains from a forecast perspective, from an order fulfillment perspective, and also to really proactively work to get the supply chain networks working well. In addition, obviously, we are bringing convergence to financial processes and more visibility into business planning and consolidation as part of the overall IBP process. From an integration perspective, we are looking at, if you look at IBP and how it interoperates with key supply chain and fulfillment processes, a number of integration capabilities are already provided out of the box from master data. But in addition, there's process level integrations between IBP and production planning and detailed scheduling and ERP and APO. It also feeds inputs into the MRP processes as well as available to promise within ERP. And as we are looking forward, most of your companies are really looking at supply chain transformation as a key aspect of digital transformation. And IBP has a big role to play in that transformation. So if you look at the picture here, we are providing I'm providing a perspective on where IBP plays a role in the overall supply chain transformation perspective and within the context of SAP S/4HANA Enterprise Management. As you all know, we've introduced a number of supply chain-oriented innovations in SAP S/4HANA, including available to promise, integrated extended warehouse management. But importantly, it's also the interoperability between the planning system, which is SAP Integrated Business Planning, and the medium-term and short-term execution processes within ERP. Right? So as you move forward from a supply chain transformation perspective, this setup here with a number of interoperable components from IBP to enterprise management in S/4HANA, and the actual order fulfillment execution processes in TM, transportation management, and extended warehouse management, this provides the full foundation that you need for both an agile supply chain and the transformations that you need to do to enable that. So with that, I'll hand it over to Pavan so he can take you through the use cases and a demo, and then we'll come back with a wrap up with questions and answers.
Thanks, Kris. Pavan, can you go ahead?
Hey, thank you, Kris, for sharing SAP's Inside Scoop. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. For the next 20 minutes, I'll briefly cover, before jumping into the IBP scenario and the demo, I'd like to briefly cover what differentiates IBP platform, right? So having seen from the baby stage, inception, and working with customers, I think these are the 4 key pillars that differentiated SAP IBP. One is in-memory, HANA in-memory, and in cloud. So you get the performance at a reduced TCO, which is a key differentiator. And data integration, the next pillar is the data integration. So IBP could connect to your existing SAP assets, right? This is because you add investments into existing SAP assets. So this integration is another key pillar. The thirdly, if you look at IBP as a process, it spans across different organizational units. So there is tremendous collaboration that is required between these units. So you need to have a solid collaboration platform, which is what SAP has given. And of course, the modern intuitive UX that they had, leveraging or taking into account of the current users' behaviors. Like planners are used to a lot of Excel front end, so SAP has exposed the same capabilities or richer capabilities on an existing user behaviors, right? And the web UI is modern. So what this has enabled is to allow customers to build a configurable and flexible data models. So from my experience, no two customers had the same data model. So this configurability on a performant HANA system in cloud enabled them to build rich models, rich functionality, covering the sensing, the planning, execution, and monitoring. Right? All of this in a real time, so the customers get the real-time insights into their supply chains. And also, you could do scenario plannings and do analysis, like you can balance the risk with profitability or supply with demand. So all of this on the fly. So which is what is a key differentiator, which is what we have these key differentiators in the IB platform. So with this. For the next 15 minutes or so, I would quickly go into an industry scenario and show the system a bit to help you understand. So we had built this high-tech scenario to illustrate the capabilities. So we simplified it to fit into the short time we have today. So let me start off by providing a high-level overview of the high-tech value network. Okay? So what you see is a value network, and It's a complex web of interrelationships across wafer foundries, semiconductor companies, OEMs, distributors, and contract manufacturers, and so forth, right? So as you move from right to left, the demand fluctuates and in an increased amplitude, right? So the industry is characterized by uncertain demand and long lead times, as we have seen in the Echo, Amazon Echo or Samsung Galaxy. So the demand is very uncertain, and it has long lead times because there are so many players involved in the supply chain. So predicting the demand gets more and more difficult as we move from the right to the left, and also the fluctuations keep increasing, right? Because the OEMs can postpone, reduce, or cancel the firm demand as they get better insights into actual customer consumer demand, right? So the semiconductor companies which are sitting on the left have to start the wafers like 3 to 4 months early to meet the shipping dates. Yeah. So this uncertain demand and long lead times calls for an effective revenue management. So let's understand the revenue management components in a bit more detail. So why is consensus S&OP plan alone is not good enough for the revenue guidance purposes? Yeah. So there are these revenue leakage points, right? So in times of a viral demand, a semiconductor company can have, say, supply chain capacity issues leading to revenue leakage. Or in times of a slow demand, a semiconductor company can have forecast accuracy issues or backlog timing issues, where demand for chips is less than the wafers already in progress, or the firm demand is received too late into the quarter to assemble, test, and ship in time for that quarter. So this necessitates a revenue management process to enable robust guidance for the street. So let's look at some of the key terms so that we, as we walk into the demo, we could relate to it. So prior quarter ship ahead, this is the revenue of the current quarter, but that was pulled into the prior quarter to make up for the revenue gap. As we were saying, the demand fluctuates, so predicting the revenue gets difficult, so there need to be a way to manage, smoothen the revenue a bit. So the next one is a delinquent backlog. So this is a backlog that could not be shipped last quarter. This backlog is still to be shipped this quarter. So this increases the load on the supply chain this quarter. Delinquent shipments, similar to delinquent backlog, where it is manufactured, but it needs to be shipped this quarter. This increases the revenue for the current quarter. We have billings and backlog. Billings is a revenue for this quarter, which has been realized this quarter. The backlog is a firm sales order demand, which is due to be shipped this quarter and is currently on track to do so per customer ship date commitment from supply chain. So the current quarter ship ahead, this is a demand that we can pull into the current quarter if required to manage the revenue gap for this quarter. So as you can see, supply chain is pressured to make and ship earlier or later than they were planned in order to help the revenue guidance for the quarter. It is extremely important for the supply chain and finance teams to work closely to understand the historic delinquencies or forecast them, right, for the future quarters to guide the street. So let's understand this better with an example. So most of you must be familiar with the classic demand collaboration process within S&OP. So the sales teams work with the customers to bake in the forecast for key accounts, and sales forecast that does get formed And same with similar with the marketing teams. They provide, they look at the product lifecycle status and new product introductions and come up with the marketing demand and they forecast it. The demand planner, who typically reports into supply chain or finance, tries to take an objective view of the demand based on the statistical forecasts. Demand planners, they also work closely with sales and marketing teams, and together they produce the unconstrained consensus demand. Yeah, this is a demand which should all turn into revenue if it did not have the revenue leakage drivers I mentioned earlier. So let's look at this in the context of the current quarter. So the supply chain provides a maximum supply number by product that kind of forms a ceiling, revenue ceiling. So from an unconstrained demand, the supply teams would come up with the constrained bill demand, and this is how it works. So from an unconstrained demand, by taking out the prior quarter ship ahead, because we already shipped these items last quarter, and then by adding delinquent backlog and delinquent shipments, we arrive at the bill demand for the current quarter. Once we forecast the delinquency based on the historical data at a product level, right? So, and once we take out the projected delinquency from the bill demand, we arrive at the shipment forecast, right? So, and then the executives can override this shipment forecast and kind of make a guesstimate of what is the revenue that is going to come in this quarter for this product family. So let me take you into the demo and show you the capabilities of SAP IBP. Let me set this up. So let me log in. So this is an Excel front end for the planners. So let me go ahead and then open the demand collaboration view. Here we look at the unconstrained consensus plan. Here by product family and then product. Here we look at the consensus key figures for the quarter. Yeah, the demand planner can at this point override the consensus demand and do the simulations. And then next I'll take you to the supply side of the view, supply response view. So imagine a supply planner coming in and looking at a constraint plan. So by product family, by product, and you can see the maximum supply quantity and the supply, how it is looking. Then let's go into the revenue forecast. So this is where the BU heads can look at the data in a product family level, and the prior data that is inputted or forecasted by the demand planners and supply planners get aggregated to the product family level, as you can see here, and the executive could take a look at it, how the revenue is going to come, what is the shipment forecast. And at this point, if I want to increase $1 million, or additional target for this product family, go ahead and then change it. And once it's simulated and saved, the information gets distributed, the new target gets distributed down to the product level, taking into account of the supply constraints. Yeah, so it provides a real-time simulation capability. The tool is pretty powerful that way. And since we are here, let's also go through some of the other functionalities. Let me walk you through the ribbon a bit more. So you could change the dimensions, or you could see different key figures, different dimensions or attributes. You could look at the data by different time periods, by editing the view, or by you could also save these reports as a favorites. You can share them with other users in the system. You could also edit the local product master or master data. If you want to add additional record, or you could edit the description of a product, you could do it without seeking help from the IT. You could also create upside downside scenarios, and then simulate what is the outcome of some decision without impacting the baseline. Of course, you can also promote the scenario into the baseline and make it a standard. So with this, I like to take you into the web UI. So here we created a dashboard for the scenario that we created, showing the billings versus backlog by product family, and demand forecast versus net demand. So let me also, since we are in the web UI, we could also show some of the content that is delivered by SAP, covering different personas and different scenarios. Let's walk into a couple of dashboards and see what they are. Let's look at demand review. Yeah, here we see consensus versus AOP, annual operating plans, and the sales forecast. A rich dashboarding capability is provided by the tool. And we could also look at one more dashboard. Maybe let's pick something in the inventory. Let's do the revenue inventory plan. Yeah, here we see the safety stock related content. So the IBP has a home page. It's a configurable home page covering different personas. So as Kris was covering all different aspects of IBP, demand, supply, response, inventory, SNOP, control tower. So they all could be, different personas could access different functionalities from one place. So the intent was to give you a glimpse of different capabilities that is offered by IBP. So how comprehensive the solution is. I hope you all got something out of this particular demo. So with this, I'd like to hand over to Ashutosh. It's all yours, Ashutosh.
Thank you, Pavan. That was very informative. Let's just try to wrap this up and leave some room for the Q&A. What I'd like to do is just cover in one slide briefly how GitaCloud can help our customers, what kind of service offerings we bring to market in order for consumers and customers to get on with planning their operations better. And let me just start with Insight as a Service. This is a digital product. It's available on our website for companies that have a very specific targeted ask in terms of either they have some roadmap assistance, validation, set of questions, or some need for a design thinking workshop, or a more elaborate transformation roadmap that they need us to develop or look at business case, etc., validating or developing. These things can be done digitally, remotely, or can be done on site. Typically takes from 2 days to 2 weeks to do so. We also offer IBP education services for our customers. This is executive education. This is IBP process-oriented education, study, etc. This is also a set of workshops that we offer, which bring in a very rich industry process content on top of the SAP IBP platform configuration capabilities. So along with the how you configure, you get a deeper understanding into why you should do things the way you're doing them, and what range of industry-specific challenges and best practices exist that can be modeled in IBP. So these typically take from a day to a week. For example, we are coming up later this month with a IBP SNOP-oriented workshop. The details are on our website for any people who are interested. We can also help with proof of concept engagement. So if you're looking to test drive IBP with your data, we have industry-specific reference models, so we can bring in a Kickstarter, a template that you can fill data into and quickly see how your industry-specific challenges are resolved with IBP. Also model anything specific to your organization. This can be done quickly in 2 to 4 weeks. We can also help with IBP implementation engagements. We take a very agile approach to this. For build, test, demo sprints, we start out with an industry reference model, of course, but we can then enable a full SCM transformation orchestration, given GitaCloud is a firm that brings in industry business transformation experts, people who have been senior VP supply chain in the industry, etc., and have led large-scale supply chain business transformation. So you get the full benefit of orchestration across people, process, IBP solution, data, everything else. And this typically takes 13 to 17 weeks. Last but not least, we have IBP run services where once it's been implemented, we also help companies sustain the value stream, set up IBP Center of Excellence, or we can set it up and run it for you. This would be making sure of any major or minor enhancements that need to go through the application maintenance support, data integration, etc., as well as business process as a service. So if for customers that are interested in just getting a better inventory optimization outcome or demand sensing as a service, or have a support their SNOP cycles, we provide services there. So bottom line, we can help in many ways. There's a lot of information on our website, GitaCloud.com, so please do visit it. And with that, I'd like to open it up to Q&A. So Rahul, if you can see questions, help us understand, and then the panel can respond.
That's great. Thanks, Ashutosh, Kris, and Pavan for the great presentation. It's very informative. Just as a reminder to our attendees, if you have any questions, type it in our chat box, and we'll answer them. I already see a couple of questions. So let's take a look at the first one. How often are the IBP solution releases being released given the solution is in the cloud, and what are all the key functionality enhancements coming in the next release?
Yeah, so this is Kris. I'll take that question, Rahul. So I obviously it's a correct recognition that SAP IBP is a cloud solution, which makes it obviously very easy to adopt. But also allows our development and operations team to roll out improvements, small to large, on a quarterly basis. The way we've been approaching quarterly releases and the type of improvements that come are, every quarter we actually do look at a lot of minor improvements across all of the solutions that were highlighted. and every 6 months or so, we do have key capabilities that are being added. As a matter of fact, key capabilities are always added every quarter, but our updates are happening on a quarterly basis. Now, obviously, we do, from a process perspective, inform our customers about these upcoming changes, and they have some capacity to accept the changes and on the timeline that all suits them as well. So I think you get the best of both worlds here in terms of innovations that are happening on a quarterly basis and your company's capacity to adopt those innovations. Second question I get it is, what are the innovations that are coming up in the latest release? I think to a large extent, I will follow up that question with another webinar that we are hosting later on and in the quarter to give you an overview. So Rahul, what we can do is send a link to the attendees to that webinar, and that gives a complete overview of the upcoming updates and improvements from an integrated business planning perspective. Okay?
That's perfect. Thank you, Kris. The second question we have is, how many customers have implemented SAP IBP yet? In what industries? And what modules are being implemented the most? I think Kris probably for you also.
Yeah, so I'll take that question again. So we have several hundred customers now. In terms of adoption perspective, all industries are well represented. I'd say from consumer products, CPG to high-tech to retail, manufacturing, automotive. We will work with our team to see if we can provide that information. The one module that is most adopted among all the capabilities that we reviewed in IBP is S&OP. And the reason being, it is one of the most impactful process and often most in need of improvement in most companies. And that's where we see a lot of companies get started. But that doesn't mean you cannot start with other areas of integrated business planning, such as inventory optimization. I think it really depends upon where the biggest opportunity for improvement is. But more often than not, I think the most adopted solution from our customer base is the sales and operations planning.
Excellent. Thank you, Kris. Okay, so next question is, how does SAP ERP integrate with IBP? Does ERP also have to be on SAP HANA to integrate with SAP IBP?
I'll take that question again. I think, Pavan, you can also add to that, right? Why don't you go forward, and then from an integration perspective, and then I can answer the HANA requirement question.
Yeah, so it's not, your assets can stay, doesn't have to be SAP to integrate with IBP. Yeah, they could be SAP ERP assets that you have on-premise, or they could be some other different vendors that you may be having. But you could use the HANA Cloud integration. There's a new name for it. So to integrate with any systems that you already have within your IT arsenal. So it's a pretty cloud product, so it's relatively easy to integrate with IBP and in a short period of time.
Yeah, let me add
anything.
I think I do the integration. Obviously, SAP integrated IBP is a cloud platform. These solutions can be run on their own. So if you have a sales and operations planning, for example, that is running on Excel today, obviously you don't have to do it. You can just adopt IBP to support that process. The key points of integration with ERP that are delivered mostly out of the box are especially around master data. So you obviously your supply chain information, your product information, material masters, etc. That integration can be done with ERP, SAP ERP pretty well using HANA Cloud integration. It's a secure way of and a very methodical way of integrating ERP with SAP IBP, for getting master data. In addition to that, for response and supply scenarios, you may also need to get order information with ERP from the ERP for evaluating fulfillment scenarios or supply planning scenarios. That integration is also provided. There's another mechanism that can be used for that, but by and far, integration to SAP ERP is something that is provided, out of the box. The second question, I think, is the prerequisite of, does ERP need to be on HANA? That is not a requirement. You could still be running, ERP on any database that you want. There is no dependency at all in terms of ERP on HANA perspective. Okay.
So there are some more questions that I'm seeing on the web. Rahul, let me just pick a couple of these up, and hopefully we can also take these on. So there's a question here from Jimit. IBP used to be available on-premise. Is on-premise option no longer available?
No, it is no longer available.
Okay. I see another one here. How beneficial is demand sensing to industries with high lead times like pharma? This came from Jackie Jan. I can take this one. So demand sensing is the answer of, let's say if you're in a pharma industry and you've got your central mother warehouse that needs to ship out to regional depots. Let's say in a country like India, we are working with a large pharma customer there. Their challenge is to get the right inventory mix from a location perspective. So you can have situations where the right inventory is just not in the right DC. Demand sensing can be very useful after you've made everything per a midterm demand plan, and it's sitting in your central warehouse to know exactly what needs to be shipped where. So as you have stockists and distributors picking up stuff from your regional carrying and forwarding agent location, we call them CFAs, that the right inventory is available there. So demand sensing, absolutely applicable for optimal deployment in industries with high lead times as well. Let me see if there are some more here. So this is another question came from Narsimha Karnakar. What are the major challenges in implementation, and how has the team overcome that? Pavan or Kris, if you want to respond to some of the challenges.
So from my experience, I think the major, the best way to implement is to have a good design thinking workshop at the beginning of the workshop and involve the stakeholders and have a good sponsor so that it is adapted well. And of course, then comes the good project management skills. But if the design is good, if the blueprint is good, and it has a better chance of a success.
Let me build on top of that. So the challenge with IBP is it's almost too flexible from a capability to model perspective, right? As we look at customers, it's very important to understand where they are on the maturity curve and how much change and transformation they can absorb in the short and mid-term. So if you're familiar with the Gartner 5-scale maturity curve, where companies can be on level 1 or 2, it's sometimes hard for them to come out of the functional excellence silo-centric thinking to have enterprise-level scenarios and do profit optimization. So I think the challenge is both to make sure that the people side of it and the process side of it is well orchestrated, and second, that the IBP flexibility is not taken to an extreme where there are just too many differences in global versus local planning and too complex the models. You have to crawl, walk around, and make sure that you can get value out of IBP in the short term.
Yeah, also I like to add one point is to do it in phases or sprints, not like try to chew everything at once, but start small, iterate, see how that goes, and innovate faster and adapt faster.
Okay. So I think we are already 2 minutes over. Rahul, I'd like to hand it back to you for questions that we were not able to answer. We'll reach out to attendees directly. But Rahul, over to you.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you all of you for attending today's webinar. If you have any questions, please do send us an email. And as a reminder, so this session will be available on our website later. If you want to visit our website, GitaCloud.com, you'll find more information there. But thanks everyone for attending. So this wraps up our today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.